Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop In CEO, and I want to thank you again for dropping in on the show where week after week I speak to the most amazing leaders and they share their insights with you. And I know along the way I'm inspired and you will be inspired too. And we provide this resource to you because we sincerely care about the C suite leaders of tomorrow to help you navigate your challenges with confidence. And this week, I am so thrilled to share the mic with Jason Marc Campbell, who is the visionary author of Selling with Love, Earn with Integrity, and Expand Your Impact. With a mission to redefine the art of sales, he empowers small business owners to see selling as a transformative, life enhancing activity. And also, we're going to dig deep into the focus on ethical sales, mindful marketing, fair employee treatment, and conscientious investments businesses can contribute to making the world a better place for everyone. Jason, thank you for dropping in.
It's a pleasure, Deb, to be here. Excited to have this little conversation and see how we can shift some lives, especially for high impact individuals.
Oh, for sure. And, to my listeners, I am really grateful for the introduction. Mitko Avanov had introduced us, and I've had the good fortune of recently being interviewed on Jason's podcast as well. And when we think about sales, sometimes it has a bad tone to it. And I myself have also been on a journey to learn how I can provide value to my ideal clients. But then I also realize it's not about the sale, but it is about selling with love. So, Jason, I would love for you to share a bit about yourself personally and your journey towards this work.
Yeah, that's so it's unfortunate that it seems typically when you have people that are trying to make a positive impact, that are highly conscientious, they want to do good, often will have a stronger tendency to look at sales negatively, almost like a necessary evil activity that needs to happen. And biggest thing I'm trying to do is see if I can inspire those who are of that great mind, of that great heart, that want to do good, to not reject or throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to sales, because it happens to be one of the most powerful skills you can have when you're leading the company, when you're actually trying to recruit the top talent, raise funds, lead powerfully. Salesmanship is an essential skill. And I first noticed this because I worked for an organization in personal development, and this organization, Mind Valley, was promoting these incredible products where when people would make a purchase could absolutely transform their lives, whether that's bringing mindfulness practices, health habits, um, and even taking care of their career and developing entrepreneurial skills. These were all amazing programs for people to take. And what I found fascinating is nobody wanted to associate themselves as a sales organization. But when I joined this company, I noticed that one of the key activities that we do is we sell these courses to people. But it's almost like it had a bad, it was like, whoa, 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 wait, no, we don't sell these courses. We're transforming lives. We're serving. Everybody's trying to dance around that word. And I'm like, hold on a second. No, we're selling these programs. And it's amazing because when people take this, it transforms them. Why is everybody trying to avoid it? Why are we not embracing it? It's almost like there's a shadow in place here around the whole world of sales. And I came from a different energy than most. Like people thought I was weirdly excited about sales and, multitude of reasons. And I kind of, in my book, share a lot more of the key things that happened in my life that made it so that I had a very different relationship with sales. But I'll tell the funny story, which I think is most interesting, which is in high school. I don't know if anybody listening had this activity where you had to sell chocolate covered almonds door to door to your like neighbors for charity at the school. I know my school asked us to do this. It was called the world's finest chocolate, although I think that's up to debate and pretty strong marketing message. But in the small town I grew up in, yeah, it was definitely the best you could get. And so I decided to participate in this campaign, and there would be like leaderboards for raising funds, and grabbed the box of chocolate. And then decided to go knock at my neighbor's doors. And the first person I kind of knocked at, I was like, hey, do you guys, maybe like 16 at the time, do you guys want to buy these chocolate covered almonds? They're just $2 and you get to have a bar if you want to buy a box. And the first neighbor was quite delighted, just saying like, oh, that's cool. It's supporting a charity and it's the neighbor's kid. And so they buy the chocolate. That was a positive interaction. Money got exchanged, value was given. They're happy to get the chocolates. And I started doing that door to door and realizing that, hey, it's not that scary to go ask. It's not like an exchange is happening. I'm happy, they're happy. We're doing it for a good cause. But even more than that was, I think, by the sixth or seventh door I knock, and the person who opens the door happens to be this beautiful woman that's around my age. And I end up selling chocolates to the family, but also getting her phone number, and happened to be one of my first partners. And so, interestingly enough, I'm talking about selling with love, but I definitely had this association that when you sell, you knock on doors, you can make an exchange. Amazing coincidences can happen. And I've seen this beauty unfold in sales in every career that I've had, whether I was selling swimming pools, working in real estate, being an executive at Mind Valley. Sales was beautiful when you had that mindset. And I was like, wow, if more amazing business owners, C-suite executives could embrace sales without that shadowy kind of discomfort, you'd actually compete against people that are manipulative. Like sales has a lot of bad salesmen and saleswomen in the field. But if the great companies embrace sales as a beautiful way of getting people's attention, making an exchange, and offering so much more than what you ask in return, you'll outcompete the slimy, the manipulative, the crooked. Won't have a place in the marketplace because you've went out and got the attention, made the sales, and delivered a great product. And this is the mission that I've been on. I've been trying to get more and more of these great companies to embrace sales in a powerful way so we can start shifting the world to making better exchanges, better commerce. And I think it's working in the right direction.
Mm, I love your story, but I think you went past a really important point that I want to learn from you. And you talk about having this mindset. Sales can be a beautiful place versus the manipulative, for which we don't even want to utter the word sales or say, "Ooh, I don't want a sale." Help me a little bit to unpack what you mean by the mindset, because I think it starts with the mindset, and then there's probably the tactical in how to then move people from A to B that results in a transaction. Talk to me.
It's so funny because I've interviewed a lot of people on my own show, right? And a couple times we went back and started focusing on mindset. I even have a specific episode with one of my good friends, Carl Harvey, where we discussed, is mindset overrated? Like, is this the thing that, we just, it's all about mindset. You just have bad mindset. And I've been in the personal growth field where I've seen a lot of emphasis on the law of attraction and mindset. You just have to have the right mind. And we started an open debate where I took the stance of saying mindset is overrated. Honestly, you just need a few tactics and a few strategies, and the mindset's just not important. And he took the stance of saying, no, mindset, even though it seems overrated, is still underrated for its importance. And he ultimately won that debate because we started playing that out and realizing that the mindset piece happens to be the thing that makes you hesitate before picking up the phone and calling someone to follow up. The mindset makes you doubt if your product is actually changing people's lives, and you start thinking maybe I should, find something else to do instead of going to serve other customers. The mindset is what fuels the energy that makes you show up in a sales environment with enthusiasm, which, I believe it's Brian Tracy who shares the fact that sales is a transference of enthusiasm, although I could be misquoting there. So don't take my word for it. But everything came back to the mindset. And so, no, the mindset is not overrated. It's underrated. It's the most important. What happens is in sales, because we have a lot of these negative presumptions around what sales are, that's like having your foot on the brake when you're trying to go forward. And a lot of the work that I do with people is trying to investigate what is going on the mindset. How do we shift all the things that are around fear, all the things around shame, all the things around guilt about selling? Because, hey, if you feel that every time you write out an email, making an ask, picking up the phone, making an ask, going into a meeting, making an ask, every time you do that, you feel guilty of some sort, like you feel like you're bothering the person, then oh my God, the amount of energy it's going to take every step you make towards having more success in your business. You're going to need to sell. I don't care if you're in a C suite or you're an entrepreneur, selling will be essential. So, how do we make it so less exhausting? Starts with uncovering what's blocking us and getting that out of the way first.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with that. Mindset versus a few tactics. I can see both sides of the argument. But for me personally, and I think I root for the one that won that argument, mindset I feel is kind of a connection to your soul, to your being, to your energy, to your chemistry of your body, and you can't disconnect from that. I would say definitely employing a few tactics to build muscle memory in order to gain confidence is what may be an enabler to slowly shift the mindset. And the thing that's really resonating with me, we've come together under the topic of sales, and we may think it's an exchange of money or services, et cetera. But ultimately, the insights that you're sharing here today, again, listeners, I'm talking to you over there, is anytime you have to promote yourself, anytime you have to influence decision makers or sell a particular initiative or propose that we need to spend a lot of money, all of these are the same tactics, having the right mindset and being able to move people from one current state to another, which could be a transaction. So I agree with that. I agree with that. And I will say, as an entrepreneur, I'm on that journey. I'm confident in my technical capabilities. I've never been taught how to ask. You use data, PowerPoints to prove your point, but never from an emotional perspective. And it's something that I think, as you say, is underrated and should be taught more. And I would love for you maybe to tell us a little bit more of some of maybe the key elements in your book, Selling with Love, Earn with Integrity, and Expand Your Impact. So I want people to buy the book, but I want you to share a bit, some of your insights from it.
It's very funny what I picked up on something you just said there around how you prepare your sales presentation and you want to rationally make your points, etc. But
Yeah.
I find it very interesting that in my time, and I'm not innocent here. I'm someone that's quite on the like head heavy, right? Like I'm a very head heavy type of person in the way that I assess situations. I take my time, I analyze. I'm a very analysis type of person, but I've realized something, and if I think hard enough of my own behavior, I can witness this as a truth. And you'll probably realize if you go out to a lot of prospects and you have conversations and you convince them rationally about making decisions, you still might be finding you're not getting the success you'd expect when you've made all these points and it all made sense. It should be obvious. And the fact that seems to rise up is that every single decision we make is an emotional decision. And I say this extremely because the emotion is going to be what makes us even pay attention to the data or not. Think about the world that we live in today, especially if you're out in America, which I am not. I'm Canadian, but I get to observe what's happening in America. You'll have a huge divide in politics, and both sides can present data. Some can be accurate, some can be false, some can be cherry picked. And I'm not going to pick on which side does what, but I'll tell you what, the data you will listen to will usually come with the one that passes the emotional filter. And this is a very interesting thing that'll happen in sales is if you're going to consider making a purchase, you'll first have a discomfort or a problem, and it will emotionally find you irritated about it. So the itch will be there. So you'll investigate. So your initial need needs to be prompted from a discomfort, an emotion, right? So you'll start looking at data, but to make you do the proper decision to act on that data, it needs to feel right. It needs to align. There's still an emotional layer that will validate that data. So it's almost emotion in, data validates, emotion out. And here's what the data could do the data could prove the emotion wrong. Like you might be thinking, gosh, I need to buy the Selling with Love book. Jason, what he's talking about, I'm feeling an emotion right now, and I feel like, yes, I need to deal with this. So then you might go do some research and you start reading the reviews of the book, and you see 90% of them 1-star reviews. Then you'd get data saying, oh, maybe I won't buy this product because it seems like I gather data and it's not a good product, but I'm going to keep looking for a solution to my sales problem. And so you might start to investigate. And when you see the one that all the data feels right, so you've looked, the reviews are good, this makes sense, then you'll have like a final emotional closure on it to make that decision, right? By the way, I'm just going to give a little clue. My reviews are very good, so you can go do that investigation. Now, I find this fascinating because that means a lot of our emphasis in our sales presentations are very head heavy. But if you add the emotional aspect into your presentation, it actually makes all the difference. You'll start with the why. You'll paint a vision of a better future. You'll speak about the irritation of the problem. And then when you provide a solution, you show the confidence, the case studies. There's a way you should be doing this with a lot more emotions. And if you look at any powerful presentation, it takes you on an emotional ride. Look at the greatest TED Talks you've seen that try to sell you on an idea. I'll tell you, one of the greatest TED Talks was Sir, I believe it's Ken Robinson. He speaks about the future of education, and the whole thing is filled with jokes, takes you on emotional journeys, and at the end, you're like, yes, we can change education. And your sales presentations should do the same. And so, Deb, I feel like I've made a point, but I'm wondering if I've answered your question in the process.
You know what it this is okay. It's just a podcast. It's you and me talking, and there's a few people listening out there. Hopefully, a lot of people listening. There's a couple things I picked up from this, heavy on the emotion, and then situations where I found this didn't work. And I'm wondering, was it me or was it the environment? So, first thing, I have a question for you. I get it. I now, because I had a pet, I fostered a pet, and now on my social media feed, I am seeing all kinds of rescue puppy this and puppy that. Boy, oh boy, are they playing to my emotions. I want a pet, but I know I shouldn't. But I wonder to what extent, I'm going to play the negative Nancy here, can playing to one's emotions also be a little deceptive and turn people off? Because a good thing, dealing with the emotions, can also be a bad thing. Talk to me about any watchouts about being a little bit too emotional when trying to convince or persuade.
All right, this is exactly why I teach what I teach because
Okay.
let me give you some concepts from the book, and you guys will get a big nugget from what I teach, and this will help you not only structure yourself in how you sell, but also be better at detecting maybe some of the deceptive sales stuff. In my book, I speak about 5 loves you have in selling: loving the impact, loving the client, loving the product, loving the process of selling, and self love. Spoiler alert, my whole book, we talked about the importance of mindset. My whole book is almost like a Trojan horse for you to look at. Your issues around self worth, self doubt are going to be the biggest barriers when it comes to success in any field, right? And this was why my book is a sales book, is a personal development book, kind of skinned as a sales book, so I can reach to the people that want to sell with love and realize that there's some self care to do. But what's interesting is that there's a particular order that I do all of these because if you love the impact, which is answering the why do you do what you do? What's the difference you want to make? And here I very quickly, like in the case of why do I even teach the selling with love is, I have a story where in my case, I've had some deceptive salespeople really take me on a ride, got me into a lot of promises. It was this seminar about buying US real estate. They promised me the stars. They put me in a room about all the promises, did a testimonial. And the moment that was recorded, they disappeared and I was left with a bunch of contracts. All the investors they had promised had disappeared. And I realized, wow, this is how powerful sales can be if you don't care. And so to me is if I can show all the people that are doing great products that want to serve, that care about the people, how to sell with love, there won't be a marketplace for these kinds of businesses to exist. That's my why. And when you're able to explain that very powerfully, it actually gets people to understand why you're selling to them more powerfully. Loving the client, which is the second piece, is just about understanding who you're selling and speaking the language that's necessary. So if I know exactly who they are, the problems they face, and I'm clear on this and I care for these people, I'm going to build the third love, which is the product, something that's an offer that speaks to them, that makes the impact and actually works to solve their problems, right? Everyone I teach and I work with, I make sure they've worked on these 3 loves first. Because if you care for the impact, the client, and you create a decent product, only then I start talking about the process of selling. Because here's a sad truth: if I learn the process of selling and I love it, I can be the most manipulative person. It's just such a superpower because you can learn psychology, you can use it to your advantage, and from there, oh my God, what you can do is crazy. It's almost scary. Like I've had times where I've kind of gone into like sales mode and made an example of this and scared myself on how intensely I can pitch just because I know what steps are necessary. And so, yes, you can use emotions too much. But the thing is you can't let it blind your thinking part, right? I mentioned that you have the emotion in, the emotion out, but the key part is don't let that emotion be something that blinds you to the thinking. When you start seeing the pressure tactics around scarcity, it is the most powerful motivator. Gotta act now, take this. They losing it if you don't act now. Taking something away from someone with a time limit, that's a big red flag, right? And so I would remind everyone that whenever you're in a sales scenario, as a way to defend yourself against the dark arts, this is probably the advice that I've given myself the most often, and I would recommend it for anybody else who find themselves getting drawn into emotion and wanting to make impulsive decisions. Is every problem that you have and solution you evaluated would look very different in 2 weeks. It seems like a long amount of time, but every time I felt myself like I need something and I become almost like obsessed about something, I put a calendar invite in 2 weeks about that idea, and I'm not allowed to take an action in 2 weeks because I get to look at it with fresh eyes. The emotion will get turned down, and then I can bring back the thinking side. So, yes, this will happen. Now, for you out there going to sell, like where's the black, the white, or the gray area if you're going to use these tools to, because in one side you could be manipulating people into buying, but what would it look like if it wasn't manipulation, it was empathy. It was learning the language that's required for people to understand the value you want to give to them. And there's only one big difference between the two. It's intent. The intent as to why you sell can shift what strategies you're using. And I'll give you an example. If I was going to if I was going to run an ad which would get you to watch this free webinar, and on this webinar I would sell you my products and services. And on this webinar I would share a powerful story, a few pieces of information, and make an offer on that webinar. Well, some people could say, wow, this whole webinar was just a whole sales presentation to get you to buy something. And yes, more than likely, it definitely was. And if your intent is because you understand that people need to get a bit more information before they make a powerful purchase decision, if you would have just told them, hey, buy my product when they don't know who you are, they would have not even given it enough attention or time to make the purchase. So you knew having a webinar in place first would be a proper way to educate, to get people to look at things differently, and to present a solution in the right environment. That means by using that tool, when you ran those ads, you were able to target so many more people that might have that problem. And the ones who do actually got to find out that you exist, actually got to be educated on the problem and discovered your solution. And even a fraction of those bought your product. And if they wouldn't have bought your product, they would still be dealing with the frustration and the pain of not having solved that problem. And so the intent as to why you designed this complicated marketing and sales presentation, webinar, ads, is because you understood that the language required for people to look at this problem and realize that they can solve it, it's going to be less expensive than they think, it's going to be more wonderful than they assumed, and you can make them make that decision now, is a beautiful way of showing empathy for these people because you care. You care because people are busy. People have other priorities. You know how you could get them to pay attention for a second, saying, hey, why don't you stop living with this pain point? I'll give you an example, which is, I love my coffee. And I'm assuming that a lot of people on this podcast also do. And I have a little scale that basically I weigh the amount of grams of coffee beans before I grind them and do my whole espresso. I'm like one of those geeks and I love it. And I've been struggling with this scale this morning because for some reason I turn it on, off, and it doesn't turn on. The battery's weird on it. And I've just been living with this scale for the last month that I've just been okay. I reset and it's not a big problem, but it's bothersome by a little bit. And quite frankly, if someone would come in and say, hey, get the scale that works every time, save some time, get your coffee. And I would have been excited to buy it, but I had to let myself have that problem for a month. And now this morning I went to buy a new scale. It'll be here this afternoon. And the person who got my business is the one that showed up paying for an ad on the marketplace to put that up saying best coffee grinder beans scale, and it's done. Great. This person knew someone will make an impulsive decision when they're done dealing with their problem. And I know this is a benign example, but here's how most people live their lives is they have things that they just let be a problem and they don't take initiative to solve it. And if you're going to be selling with love, you're going to be able to proactively deal with people's problems before they let it go out of control, be so irritating, cause irreparable damage. The coffee scale doesn't matter, but there's problems you solve in your business that I know do matter. And if you're able to catch people earlier, sell them passionately because you care, you love the impact, you love the product, you love the client, then you use the tools that are necessary to sell because that's speaking a language of empathy. It's not manipulation. That's why intent matters.
This, I love this so much. And it's leading, like you say, with your why and intent, and the transaction is secondary. And while we still have a livelihood and we have to move things forward and, sell in order to keep things viable, when you focus on that, and this is what I talk about, when you focus on short term results, you might get your numbers, you might make your sales, but it's not sustainable. Invest in people that you care about, and it's on their timeline to make a decision. But once they become your customers, you have loyal customers, and you can then maybe sustain the sales in order to be in service to you and sustain the business that you are responsible for. I got to ask you a question though. I went through a transformative change in my corporate career where I knew that I couldn't lead a certain way. I said, I have to lead differently, not by the types of projects I'm going to do to improve the quality or operations. I said, I need to lead differently. I see a different future for the people in my care. I don't want my customers to struggle as much. I want the people in my care not to work 12-hour days. I needed to lead differently as a leading purpose. And then the tactical work is how we actually then execute. I knew this was right. And I passionately sold this idea to the corporate people that I had to do this presentation for. And I was deflated at the end because they said, well, that was very nice. I said, but what are you going to do to get your numbers? And it was very upsetting to me because I realized human connection was the purpose and the why, helping people to do their job better, faster, cheaper. And ultimately, I'll get the results that my peers said we need more leaders like you to think and have heart and lead differently and care about the people to get a different result. You have other people that just focus on the results. It's not sustainable, and we're not going to get anything different. My thoughts for you, and you and I are just having a conversation. Let's just say somebody learns that there is a different way to sell with love, and they present themselves and they show up like that to the environment that they're in. What if the environment doesn't accept it? Do they continue to persist and continue to love, or maybe change their environments? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. That's a great question because a lot of people might be finding themselves in the wrong sales environment.
Mm,
There's plenty of toxic sales cultures. Plenty.
yeah.
And it's one of the most interesting things because if you're trying to be a little sunshine in that kind of environment, that might be a little disruptive and they might not be open to make that change. Now, there's two schools of thoughts, or at least two paths I could paint for the person who has that kind of attitude. Number one, if you have the right attitude of wanting to sell from a place of caring and that you want to put in lots of hard work, sales is a hard job. Okay. And if you care for your clients, that's you putting in extra work. It's going above and beyond the minimum. The minimum, do the numbers, right? Like it's a numbers game, do the numbers, don't care about the client. You will be doing the bare minimum. And if that's your type of energy, then that's probably not the methodology for you. But I have a feeling for the people listening that want to sell with care, you're ready to go above and beyond. That means you're already going to be an above average salesperson. Like any great company that is growing, wants to build a world changing type of organization, are starved for amazing salespeople who care, who are ready to put in the work, and are going to be a part of a growing culture that are doing amazing sales in the process. You can always get a better job, and there's amazing environments that exist. But the real question you have to ask yourself is for the company you currently work for that you notice this, is this a mission that this company has that you feel you want to be a part of? That you're like, you know what this company is doing is part of my core mission. I want to be here and I want to be the person that drives the change. You will need to start becoming a secret agent inside of that organization that's slowly working towards shifting that culture in a powerful way. That's a lot of work. That's you demanding to care so much about this organization that you're going to do whatever it takes to make that shift happen. But I'll tell you, if you care a lot about this organization and you're willing to put in that work, which is going into the trenches, speaking to leadership, really putting in that work, you might end up being one of the people that creates the biggest corporate transformation in the process. But it demands patience. It demands you caring so much, putting a lot more work than anyone else, that you need to decide, is this worth it? Because a lot of times you might find that for some individuals, they might not find that this company is something they're ready to dedicate so much towards.
And, you know, the beauty of these podcast interviews is I get a little bit choked up in the process because I've been on a journey of learning a better way to build relationships in service to my clients, and in not such a salesy way, but just show that I understand them. There's the empathy card, understand their environment, and I see a better place and they just can't see it. And then just seeing the energy and the head bob in the process, that they know they've been heard. And often when it comes to the transaction, they don't really care about how much. It's more about when can we start? And so that's the beauty of caring, selling, selling with love. But we are going to take a commercial break here and ask you the question that I've been dying to know about is your accent is Canadian. I know you're from Canada, but you are talking to me from Bali, a beautiful nation of Bali. How did you make the transition, or what was the reason that you are living in a totally different country now? I'm just very curious about that.
Yeah, a series of coincidences, opportunities as I've been on a path of just figuring myself out, you could say.
Okay.
But I worked in the whole the I found myself going at the University of Ottawa. I'll start here. By going at the University of Ottawa, I had an opportunity to do an exchange, a student exchange. And I'm from a very small town in Canada. Like when going door to door to my neighbors selling chocolates, you're talking about going to farmers, going to like welders. Like that's the kind of neighbors I had, 1,000 people population. And so, as such, I went to Ottawa University, the big city, which is still less than 1 million people. And my whole world was, hey, you speak French, you speak English, you get to work for the government in Canada, the federal government. You get a nice pension, you work for 35 years, retire, all that. That's the path for people. And what happened is I got this idea of doing a student exchange, and I got accepted to a school of all places, Thailand. And so I went to there, like the Harvard of Thailand, for 4 months. And what was incredible about that experience is I got to see with people from Sweden, America, Japan, people from South Africa, France, Germany, UK. We were kids from around the world together, studying, traveling. The teachers were some of the best teachers I've ever had, speaking about international commerce, international economy. It was a business administration program, so it was fantastic. And the lesson I got from there is that, wow, the world isn't as different when you go live in other places. Like we're all humans trying to figure things out. And there was so much more in common with everyone that I thought we were going to be very different. It wasn't. And so the world became very small when it felt so big, now felt so small. So, in the process of developing my career, there was this incredible company called Mind Valley that was based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I admired the work that they did online, helping entrepreneurs and more. And I decided to apply for a job there. And a little Canadian, thinking, oh, I could go get a job in Kuala Lumpur. Why not? And that was even 5 years after the exchange. So I find myself working in Kuala Lumpur for 7 years. So here I'm based in Southeast Asia. And the coincidence that happened so that I ended up in Bali is in January 2020. I decided to take a trip to Bali, and I had already designed myself to be able to work remotely. I'd lived in Miami, still working for this company in Kuala Lumpur. So here I am, able to work remotely, and I decided to take a month holiday, well, working holiday in Bali. And this little thing started to happen called COVID. And there was a decision to make. Do I stay or do I go back to Canada? And I decided to stay in Bali for the length of that pandemic. And that was 5 years ago. And by living here, setting up my roots, joining the communities, I've made this my home. So, and that's how I ended up in Bali. So, a series of interesting events that brought me closer and closer.
Okay, well, I love you sharing those personal stories. Again, this is what makes you memorable to my audience. We have been talking about selling with love, but oh, that Canadian who has found their way to the exotic place of Bali and is smiling and just has this amazing voice. You will be memorable. And so I'm grateful for this conversation. For me personally, it's great validation that if you really care about humanity, sell with love on their timeline. They're going to make the decision to work with you. But at the same time, learning the skills from your book about painting a picture of what the future could look like if we work together is such a better way of working rather than sales. So I would love to give you the floor one last time to share any last thoughts for my audience or ways for people to get a hold of you. Because honestly, I am sincerely grateful, Jason, that I've had you on the show. And if anybody is at all curious about your work to be able to sell with love, make it feel more relational versus transaction, I want them to connect with you. So, final words for you, Jason.
I think I'd leave. I find the word love often comes across as pretty intense and heavy for people, particularly in corporate. Is like love. Oh my God, are we talking about like romantic love with our clients? We'll get sued for that, you know? And so I want to maybe let everyone that's listened to this thinks it's a good idea, but maybe still has a bit of resistance, especially because it seems so lovey dovey. And I'm going to give you an alternative word that I think can be very powerful in anything that you do, whether you are in sales, you're a CEO, and it's the case for care. Like the whole thesis that I want to bring forward is a case for care is good for business. Caring brings value. Caring allows the company to grow. Caring makes you work harder for things that matter. Caring for the client, caring for your employees, caring for the stakeholders. The more care you put into it, the more work you'll need to put, the more energy you'll put into your work. This is true. But I'll tell you, you'll be able to tap into a source of energy that is so much more powerful than obligation, than need, than dread. When you show up with care, you'll probably find that at first it's a little uncomfortable because you're just like, oh, I have to care for these clients. It's like, okay. But then you're like, wait, what if I do care for these clients? What if I'm making a difference and I'm reminded of the difference I make in my employees' lives, my stakeholders' lives, my clients' lives? And now every initiative and energy you put into it, you know you're actually making a difference. You'll show up a lot more powerfully. And I would say you'll be one of the people that will have a career growth trajectory or an entrepreneurship venture that is very likely to bring a lot of fruits to your roots.
Jason, I am so grateful that you've dropped in on the podcast. This was very inspirational for me. Everybody needs to develop some of these essential skills in selling with love because it is about caring for humanity. And with that energy, everything is going to be so much easier. So I just want to say thank you again for being an amazing guest, and I wish you well and continued success.
Thanks, Deb. It was an absolute pleasure to share.